Allison, thanks so much. It's an absolute joy to be back with you guys again. Every opportunity I get to be a part of the Thrivent, I guess I'll call us an extended family. It's always an absolute joy. It's a blast to be with you guys today. And I want to thank Allison, Craig, Joel, just the whole team for giving me the honor to be with you guys today, guys and girls all over the region. And so I want to take some time today and talk to you about what it means to know your worth. And by that, I don't mean just in your business. I don't mean in your financial situations. I mean understanding that the God-given worth, the way that He has created you. Because what I've discovered in my life, and as I've taken over 3,000 people through the Spiritual DNA course, I've discovered that what happens is when you know your worth, you do actually change your world. And I used to say this in a little more grandiose way. I'd say when you know your worth, you're going to change the world. I've had to come back from that because I can't guarantee that if you apply the things we're going to learn today, that you'll do anything for Cambodia, or I don't even know if we can help Florida out, right? But what I do know is it will begin to change your world. And your world is really your relationships. That's where you show up. That's where you make the most difference. And so I can guarantee you that is as you begin to understand and apply the things that we're going to walk through this afternoon, it will start changing your world. And so what I know about you, and I know about you, me, and all of us, all whatever 7 billion of us on the planet, is that we want our life to matter. We want our life to matter. And when we feel like we're not making a significant difference and an impact in the world, that begins to bother us. And I think it's in uncertain times like now where we're quarantined, we're at home, we're not able to step into the regular business or professional or even personal environments that we're used to. We begin to think and question, am I actually making the kind of difference I want to make? And I think when we get into these moments and we start asking deep questions like that, we often need to ask questions about our questions. Like, why in the world do we think that our life should matter? It's a big question, right? But I think sometimes we have these big questions, these big desires, and we never stop and think back to, why do I actually think this? And here's what I want to kind of present to you today is that you think your life should matter, but why is that? And if you have a pet at home, I do. He may burst in my office here in a minute, but he's a little mini golden doodle. His name is Theo, and I'm sure you may have dogs, you may have cats yourself. And here's what I know about your dogs, your cats. I don't know if anybody has any reptiles on the Zoom call today. I hope not. If so, we definitely need to pray for you. But when you know, what I know about my dog is this, and I think we have a slide here of my dog Theo. I want you to get your mind around Theo, right? I think he'll click up here in a minute. There's Theo, all right? There's Theo the golden doodle. And Theo the golden doodle, I don't believe has ever felt like his life should matter. Theo has, if we did a sign up sheet for your life matters in the dog world, Theo would never sign up. In fact, no one would sign up. It would be a completely empty room. No dogs would show up for that webinar. And the reason is because Theo, there's something different about Theo, and there's something different about you and me. And it's important. And it's actually the way that we're created. And it's actually has to do with our worth. Because here's the deal. Theo, right now in quarantine, is living his best life. In fact, most days for Theo is if he had, let's say he had like a dog, maybe a dog phone, and it had his calendar on it, is Theo's day looks the exact same every single day. Okay, Theo wakes up in the morning and he's super excited. He's, tail wags. He's ready to go because he gets to go outside and use the bathroom. And he does that. He goes out and he goes to the exact same place in the yard every single day. And I know it because my grass is dead there. And if you have a dog, you know what I'm talking about. Then Theo runs in. He's very, very passionate about the next thing on his list, which is to eat. Now, if your dog's like my dog, Theo has eaten the same exact meal every single day of his life, right? Twice a day. He's got a cup in the morning, cup at night. He eats the same food twice a day. He's been doing this for 5 years and he never complains. He's never sad about it. He's always so excited that it's time to eat the same exact thing again. After Theo does it, he goes back out, he goes to the bathroom again, and then this picture is applicable. This is what he does for the rest of the day, every day, until we come home from work, right? Now, right now, he's a little bit confused because he's like, why do you humans never leave my home? Usually I get peace and quiet at least 6 to 8 hours a day. But Theo has done the same thing for the past 5 years. And guess what? I never look at him and he looks depressed. I never see him staring off, into the bushes thinking to myself, man, am I living my dog life best? Am I wasting this life? He never thinks that. And neither does your dog. And here's why. It's because you are so much more than 46 physical chromosomes, and Theo is not. You want your life to matter because you have been created in the image of God. You are so much more than the 46 physical chromosomes that make you you. That's how you came to life, right? You got 23 from mom, 23 from dad. That makes you 46 physical chromosomes. But you are so much more than that because you were created by God. And as he created humanity, he actually breathed his spirit, or in the Old Testament, it says his ruach, his breath into humanity, and brought us together, brought us alive as living spirits. And so the understanding that you feel like your life should matter is not just something you made up. It's because of who created you and how you were created. And what I want you to understand this is, if you're going to believe great things about your future, about our future through this quarantine and what comes next, if you're going to believe great things about your future, you first must believe great things about your past. And I don't mean 6 weeks ago. I don't mean 6 months ago. I mean from the beginning of time. And I think the next slide says that quote: to believe great things about your future, you must believe great things about your past. And that means that you understand that as Ephesians 2 talks about, that we are the workmanship of Christ Jesus, created in him to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do. Meaning that we were created uniquely by God, and that there's actually a mission. There's things that we need to step into that are waiting for us, prepared in advance for us to do. And a lot of what I'm sharing with you guys today comes from the seminar and the online course that I teach called Spiritual DNA. And I developed Spiritual DNA off of a revelation that I feel like God gave me from 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, where it says that Jesus has the power of God, and he has given us everything we need for life and for godliness. Or another translation says that we have been given everything we need to live and to serve God, which is an amazing understanding that you have already, if you're in a relationship with Jesus, you have already been given everything you need to live and to serve God. And if you place that understanding into a physical paradigm, your DNA gave you everything you needed to become you. You've never had to get a DNA booster shot, right? And the same is true as when you're brought to life by God. The reason you feel like that your life should matter is because God has actually created you and given you a unique spiritual DNA that makes you unique beyond anyone else on earth. And within that uniqueness of how he's created you, he's also given you a mission to fulfill. So it's not just an inspiration thing. You didn't just watch, Braveheart and feel like I should change the world. No, God has created you uniquely. And as you step into that, you will actually begin to change your world. One of the struggles with actually doing this, though, is that fear becomes our enemy. And this next slide says that, right? Fear is our enemy, is that you want your life to matter, but fear is your enemy. It's my enemy as well. And there's 7 billion of us on earth, and that's our enemy, is fears. And if you think about it this way, if you think about every decision you wish you wouldn't have made, you know what was present? Fear. If you think about every decision that you wish you would have made, the regret, like you got the ones where, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Then the other side, you go, man, I wish I would have made that call. I wish I would have taken that job. I wish I would have called that guy back, right? Whatever it is, the enemy is the same. It's fear. It's what keeps us from becoming who we are born to be. And I find 2 ways that I feel like fear begins to creep into our life. And it's through what I call character corners and competency cracks. There's places in your life right now where you have character corners, and you see these come out oftentimes in the decisions you wish you wouldn't have made. And when you have character cracks in your life, what happens is you begin to feel unqualified for the mission God has given you. And the illustration I would use of this, it's almost like the opportunities that God brings into your life are like round holes. And if you have taken off the character corners in your life, you're able to move seamlessly through the opportunity God's bring you. But if you have a place where you feel like you're butting up against something, you're not able to move into the opportunities God gives you, it could be because you're a square peg in a round hole. And God needs to begin to work on some character issues in your life that allow you to move seamlessly through the opportunities that he brings you so your life will matter. When that happens, you begin to question, am I qualified for the opportunities that God is bringing me to make my life matter? The other part that it comes in, and there's a slide for this, I believe, as well, is it comes in through competency cracks. The competency cracks are when you begin to wonder, are you adequate for the opportunities? Not that you're unqualified, but am I adequate to face the challenges that are in front of me right now to make my life matter? And in Stephen Furtick's book, Unqualified, I love it. He talks about the power of our third words. And one of the most powerful statements and sentences we can speak is just three words. It's this: I am fill in the blank. And if fear is the author of your life and is beginning to try to be the author of your future, that third word will be a statement full of fear and a statement that is actually disconnected from what God says is true about you. So I want to encourage you, as you're taking some time in this quarantine, I'm sure, to reflect, maybe to journal, you're spending more time at home and downtime to think, is to take a look and say, when I'm faced with character corners, when I feel unqualified, when I see the competency cracks in my life and I feel somewhat inadequate, what's the third word that I'm placing on myself? And is the author of that word God, or is it fear? And it makes me think about my friend Tracy. Tracy helps me run the Spiritual DNA workshop. And early in life, she was a rising star at a huge pharmaceutical company, and was promoted 6 to 7 times through her 20s. And she was on, the corporate ladder skyrocket. And then she came to a point where she felt like the right and maybe noble thing to do was to quit her job and to go be a stay-at-home mom with her 3 daughters. And as she did that, she felt like it was the noble thing to do, but it didn't take long before she had no idea how to answer that third word. I am. She knew who she was when she was, a skyrocketing corporate, person, and she was making it happen, and she was the boss and all these things. Now I'm mom, but am I just mom? And I don't know what that is. And am I competent for this? Am I qualified for this? And what began to happen is fear began to take over Tracy's life. And over a process of a few years, it sent her into a kind of a tailspin that almost cost her marriage. It began to cost her happiness and her joy and her sense of strength to create the future that God had created her for. Tracy tells a story that about 8 years ago, she went through our Spiritual DNA course, and she began to get clear on her worth. She began to get clear on who God created her to be and her leadership voice, which we're going to dive into in just a second here. And over 8 years, God began to rebuild that third word in her, to where even in the past 2 years, she had some amazing moments with God's Spirit where he began to remove the blinders that fear had placed on her. And she began to see herself, to see herself as the person God had created her to be, to understand that fear did not need to be her author, but Jesus was the author and perfecter of her faith and of her future. And right now she's developing a brand new ministry to executives and teams called Blessed to be the Boss. And what's happening, it's been so beautiful to watch my friend Tracy, is as she began to understand and believe, yes, God has created me for my life to matter. I will no longer allow fear to control me. And now she's stepping into the freedom to become who she was born to be. And it's absolutely inspiring. And it brings me back to the next point here in the slides is that when you know your worth, you will change your world. When you know your worth, you will change your world. And we set out a link for you guys to jump on and to take the 5-voice assessment. And we're going to go to that in just a minute. And I want that to be at least a takeaway you have today to begin to get a little clearer on the unique way that God has created you, so you can leverage that for great impact, not only professionally here with Thrivent, but also personally. And so when you know your worth, you will change your world. That'll be a slide here that comes up in a minute. And so much of us knowing our worth has to do with the story that we tell ourselves. And I want to grab a quote from Michelangelo, actually the artist, not the Ninja Turtle, although the Ninja Turtle, Michelangelo, had a lot of great quotes as well. But Michelangelo, the artist, he says this, and there's a slide for this. It says this: the great danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. That's so true as we try to step into understanding our worth and changing our world. And Michelangelo knew what he was talking about, because the interesting thing about him is he lived most of his life believing that he was the disenfranchised. He was from he was kind of a disenfranchised aristocrat, and he was eager to live his life in a heroic and noble way to restore his family's honor. And that story he was telling himself drove him for most of his life, for the accomplishments that he achieved. Here's the funny thing, though. It wasn't true. It just wasn't true. He wasn't from an aristocrat type family. He believed a lie. But here's the crazy part about this, is that for Michelangelo, it didn't matter if he was believing the truth or not. It just mattered the story he was telling himself. And so what is the key story that you tell yourself when you wake up every Monday morning? Is it that third word for you is written by fear? Is it that you're not greater than your character corners or your competency cracks, that you couldn't do anything great for God, for fill in the blank? Or do you wake up every day and tell yourself the truth about what God has said to you? And what would it look like for you if you woke up every day and began telling yourself this? You know what? I've been created on purpose and for a purpose. And I'm so much more than 46 physical chromosomes. What if you woke up every day and began to tell yourself the truth that you were designed to fulfill a unique vocation? And not only that, but you have been given a voice to create that future. That's what I want to help you discover today, and I believe it's true about you. In Jeff Going's book, The Art of Work, he says this: a vocation is not something you try, it's someone you become. And I believe that every single one of us has a vocation or a voice that God has given you. The word vocation comes from the word vocare in the Latin, which means to call. I believe that you have a calling on your life, that every single one of us is so much more than 46 physical chromosomes, that your life is to matter, that fear is your enemy, but that you can overcome that enemy by stepping in faith to become who God has created you to be and to step into that voice. And here's the deal with this is, like I said, I believe you have a voice, you have a vocation, you have a calling. And when we talk about voices, it's kind of funny to think about it this way, but I don't know if anybody, I wish we could all hear each other, but I don't know if anybody on the call is really good at impersonations. I'm guessing, I checked, we've got well over 100 people on the webinar today. I'm sure that there's somebody that's just can kill impersonations. I'm not that great at impersonations. I'm okay at them, not wonderful. I've got one that's quasi decent, and it's not that good, but it's a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonation. And I only got a couple phrases, but it goes like this, right? Here's my bad Arnold Schwarzenegger. It goes something like this: get in the chopper. Right? I don't know. Maybe it's okay. I don't know if it comes across. And thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. I mean, it's hard to know without seeing the audience here, right? I've got another phrase. Sometimes it could be this one, like "get down." That's about it. That's about all I got. And here's the thing about me. God has given me ability to speak and communicate. It's one of my strengths. And so most of my life is using my voice. But check this out. Imagine if all day, every day, I didn't know my voice, but I had to live my entire life doing a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just imagine I have 3 boys. I can hear one of them in the basement hitting off a tee, which is great. Hey, Dad's doing a webinar. Why don't we do some tee work? But I can't imagine trying to raise my 3 boys if I'm doing a bad Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like every night, do your homework. They'd be like, Dad, you're crazy. You've lost your mind. Like we can't take you seriously. I can't imagine date night with my wife doing the bad Arnold Schwarzenegger. That would not go well. Okay. And here's what I know is that if you don't know the voice God has given you, you may be doing a bad impersonation of yourself. And that allows fear to take control. That allows you to step back in shame a lot of ways. It doesn't allow you to step into the future and to begin to get created with the confidence that you know who God's created you to be, and you know the voice in which He's created you to speak. Because you do have a calling, you do have a voice, and I want you to discover it this morning. Because when you do, you'll begin to understand the joy and the life change, like my friend Jen. Jen, I got to know her about 3 years ago, and she was at a job, a successful job, leading a department of a large university. But as we're going to unpack these voices here real briefly here in just a minute, she is her vocation or calling, and it comes from Ephesians chapter 4, is she's a teacher, or we might call it a guardian. That means that she's a champion of systems and structure. She can take things that are complex and break them down to be easy to understand and implement. She can execute plans. She can develop systems and structures. She's an absolute ninja at administrative things. And what began to happen is she was in an environment where people didn't appreciate her voice or her calling. They began to talk down to her. They began to feel like she was a wet blanket, like she was always asking too many questions. Like, why do we have to have your list? And why does everything have to have a bullet by it? And why does everything have to be highlighted? And does vacation really need an agenda? And she began to be ashamed of the voice that God had given her. And she began to shrink back in fear. And she almost went quiet in her leadership. She came into our spiritual DNA workshop and discovered that God had created her to be a teacher guardian. And over a 2-year period, we were able to actually develop Jen. And then just back in October, we hired her to be our full-time executive director of our nonprofit. And in just 6 to 9 short months, she has begun to revolutionize how our ministry functions because she's stepping into her voice and becoming who she was born to be. And so I want to go through these voices real quick. We're just going to run through them in the slides real quick. And I think maybe Derek's running it, and hopefully we can stay on point with where we're going so I can get through them. I just want to give you a snapshot. If you went through and took the assessment, I believe that the folks at Thrivent sent it out to you. If you haven't taken it, it's a free assessment through 5 Voices, a phenomenal company over in the UK. And this is a part of the spiritual DNA course that I was talking about. It's just one of the assessments you go through. But let's look at the 5 voices. This does come from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11, where it says that Christ gave these gifts to the church: the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds, and the teachers. I believe these are the 5 archetypes of God's creation, and every one of us fulfill one of those roles. And it is our voice or our calling and how we lead, not just professionally, but personally as well. And so the words that we're using here for the 5 voices bring it to a little more of a more modern context. And so the words are pioneer, creative, connector, nurturer, guardian. And so we've just got a few minutes left today. In fact, let me make sure on that. Allison, do we have till 1:15 or till 1:30? I want to be really respectful of the time. Joel?
Eric, yeah, you're good until 1:30.
All right, we got time to jump through these. And can we take questions, guys, or is that a no-go?
No, we can take Q&A. We're watching the chat box. We'll bring it up.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's jump into the slides here. We're going to step into the first voice, the first calling, which I believe we start with. I'm trying to see here. Go ahead, Derek. Go forward again. One more. There we go. All right. The nurturer. Here's the deal. Probably 43% of you that are on the call right now are probably nurturers. Nurturer or shepherd. Shepherd would be the term from Ephesians 4. Nurturer is what we get here from the 5 voices. You folks are champions of people, and you work to take care of everyone around you. I won't hit every one of these points for time. You can read through those and take a look at them. Here's the deal about nurturers. The question would be, why would God create 43% of the population to be shepherd nurturers? And I think it's very simple, and it's this, is because, as Gary Smalley says, that life is relationships and everything else is just details. And so if life is relationships and God is about righteousness or right relationship, it would make sense that he would equip 43% of the population to be skilled at actually taking care of relationships. Go to the next slide. The nurturer, here are some of them at their best, right? They appreciate each person's contribution, which is huge. I got to go back here. Where'd you guys go? Here we go. Sorry, I got a phone call and it screwed up my whole thing. They intuitively feel how an organization will react to a new idea. Nurturers function as the relational oil inside of an organization, and they have a commitment to relational harmony before, during, and after meetings. If you're a nurturer shepherd, you get done with a meeting like this, and then you probably text somebody, or maybe there's a tense meeting at work, and things are kind of, I'm not sure. You're the person that pulls somebody into your office, and it's like, hey, are you okay? Listen, I know that was tough, right? You remember people's birthdays, their anniversaries, and you're absolutely so unbelievably necessary, but you also have some vices or you have some blind spots. Let's check this next slide. Blind spots. Nurturers can be overly resistant to change and become passive aggressive. Got to watch that one. They can feel unable to challenge a proposed direction when they disagree because they're usually so concerned with harmony. Sometimes making money is seen as an impure motive, and they don't usually value their contribution. Understanding these voices and calling, especially as leaders, is so important, guys, because if you have a many nurturers on your team and you're not one, it's very important that you make sure you know how much you value their contribution so that you give them a platform to be able to speak and to be strong in leading within your organization. A little tip for you as far as meetings: if you have nurturers on your team, shepherd nurturers, and you have a discussion where decisions are being made within the organization, it's important to allow the nurturers to speak first, because they will allow you to view the challenge through the context of relationships and people and not through problems or deadlines. So next one, let's look at the next role. The next role is the creative or prophet. 9% of the population. Your creatives here, your champions of innovation, of future ideas, your conceptual architects, you're able to see how pieces fit together. You're never satisfied with the status quo, and the word can't is not in your vocabulary. Oftentimes, creatives are introverts because they love spending time with themselves and with God and hearing and perceiving the future. That's why this is the prophetic or the creative voice. At their best, for those of you that are creatives, 9% of you on the call today, the next slide there, at your best, you see the future first, both in long-term opportunities and potential dangers. Because you're never satisfied with good enough, you can push organizations to higher heights. And you are like the early warning radar system, and you can see dangers for the future before everyone else. Here's the deal with this. Sometimes prophet creatives can be seen as people who get in the way of progress, especially to pioneer apostles, which we'll end with today. But I want, if you took the assessment prior to getting on the webinar today, and you saw yourself that you are a pioneer apostle, your creative prophet counterparts are some of your best friends to keep you on the straight and narrow and moving with clear vision and direction, because they are the kind of people you need to be able to see what's on the other side of decisions, as well as to be able to really discern where the heart of God is as you move forward. Some of the greatest partnerships to get great things accomplished are when you see pioneer creatives, or we could say apostle prophets, work together in tandem, dynamic duos. Here's some blind spots for you creatives. Take a look at this real quick. You can often fail to see the 90% that's been achieved and focus on the 10% that has yet to be accomplished. Sometimes your idealism can trump your pragmatism, and you can have a tendency to ignore financial constraints sometimes and other practical hurdles. Definitely necessary, though, creatives, huge voice within the kingdom of God. Next slide. Take a look at the role of the guardian teacher. Now we got 30% of the population. So if we add this together, we got 43% of people are shepherd nurturers, and we got 30% of people are guardian teachers. So we've got 73% of all people fall into one of these roles. And if you look at the answer is the same here as it was for the nurturers, is that these are guardians of champions of responsibility and stewardship. They value logic, systems, order, procedure, and process. If you're looking at life being relationships and everything else is just the details, it makes sense that God has created, uniquely created, 73% of the people to guard, to guide, and to nurture relationships. It's so important. Guardians, you like to see established track records of success to justify trying something different, and you feel frustrated when people seem like you're raining on parades. Now, here's what can happen. I've used this illustration before. As a pioneer apostle, I'm an innovative, new idea type of guy. And what would happen in this case is if you have a pioneering apostolic leader in your organization, they're going to come up with an idea. Let's say they say, listen, guys, we've got this river here, and we're going to build a bridge across the river, and we're going to be able to bring supplies and commerce and great things across the river, and it's going to be great. And we just need to build the bridge. Who's with me? And it'd be a big, awesome rally, and they'd probably have like explosives and pyrotechnics and like flashy lights, and everybody gets super stoked that the pioneer apostle had the idea to build a bridge. And the guardian would be the person right after the big rally was over where they'd raise their hand and be like, how much is that going to cost? And do you have any idea how to actually drill down and set concrete in water? Do you have any idea how that process goes, right? They're going to ask all the questions to actually execute the plan. And if you don't know how to value your voice as a guardian teacher, or as one of the other voices, you don't know how to value the voice of the guardian, you can begin to think that they are that raining on the parade, wet blanket person that just likes to shoot holes in your ideas. They're not. They're actually the people that will ask the correct questions to actually get the job done. So the partnership there is huge. Let's go to the next slide. At your best, guardians, you have long-term commitment to deliver on time and on budget. You guard what is already working, and you have a relentless commitment to ask difficult questions, even when no one else will. You have a selfless capacity to deliver the vision once it's agreed upon. Absolute crucial to every team. There are some blind spots, though, for you guardian teachers. Next slide here, we'll talk about that. You have a deep desire for truth and right decisions, which can often override the feelings of others. If you're looking at a Myers-Briggs assessment, usually our teachers are thinkers, not feelers. If they had a life statement, it would be the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. They want to know the truth, and that sometimes what that can do is bring them to an overly critical. They can be overcritical of people and ideas. And the struggle sometimes for a teacher guardian is that people become problems, not people. And so that's something that we got to take a look at too. So last group we'll go into, and if we have any questions, I would love to do any Q&A if we have any of those. Well, I guess there's two more. I got to keep going. We're running out of time. The connector or evangelist. They're 11% of the population. They are, I can't see, there we are. They're champions of relationships and strategic partnerships. They rally people around causes. Connectors are great gatherers of people and resources. Like connectors often says, response to challenges with whatever is needed. I can get it, or I have a source. And people, if you're a connector evangelist, you do this naturally. Everything that you do, that you read, that you eat, that you drink, that you listen to, you're always logging it away as a way to actually let other people know about good news. And so when we have the word evangelist, it actually means, it's the idea of this bringing of good news. And we look at that in church understandings of the evangelist. People talk about the gospel or Jesus, but God has created you as a connector evangelist to bring good news about anything. And so it's something that naturally happens. Is you have a great network of friends and connections. You're probably an extrovert. You're probably a great storyteller. And God has created you to connect people to good news. And whether that, like I said, is about Jesus or about the best restaurant in town. Here are you at your best. Next slide. At your best. There we go. You know how to connect people. You have boundless energy. You create connections and new opportunities, usually persuasive and inspirational communicators. You do have some blind spots, connector evangelists. And here that is there it is. Here's some blind spots. You can often not engage with critical feedback, and you can often sometimes be passive aggressive because you feel like people are rejecting you and they reject your ideas. And you can tend to boomerang conversations and make them about yourself. Definitely needed. If you got an idea that people need to know about, give the ball to the connector evangelist. Everyone will know what's happening, and they will succeed greatly. Last one we have here, the last voice or vocation or calling from Ephesians chapter 4 is the pioneer. The pioneer apostle. They're only 7% of the population. They are champions of aligning people and resources. They live with an anything is possible attitude, and they seek the quickest, fastest, and most efficient ways to do things. They love outside the box thinking. If you're a pioneer, you probably have struggled oftentimes maybe to work in large organizations where you're not able to actually move forward and influence the vision and values of an organization. That's because pioneer apostles don't like building on old foundations. They like pioneering new ones. And in an immature way, pioneers can feel very arrogant in what they're doing. Or even rebellious, but understand that in a mature way and growing in those character ways, you understand that it's not an arrogant rebellion. It's actually who God's created you to be. At your best, you pioneer apostles, you are, next slide, pioneer apostles, there we go. Strategic, you bring strategic military-like thinking, you display courage to make difficult decisions, and you have a capacity to align resources and people. You guys can read the rest of those. I want to make sure we're respectful of time. The last slide on this part of the presentation is the blind spots. You can appear arrogant and me-focused at times. You can fail to hear and value the other 5 voices, and you get frustrated when people don't get it. Here's the thing about apostle pioneers is you're like the thumb on a hand. This is kind of interesting thought, is the thumb is the only finger that can actually touch all the other fingers. And that's because when things are started by pioneer apostles, they have to do everything that is needed and necessary they need to do to start. But one of the key things for a pioneer apostle is as soon as they can develop and find and unleash the other 4 voices, the other 4 callings, they need to get out of the way and just become who God's created them to be. So that's a look at your unique voice. I believe that one of these is your base calling in life, and that every decision, every strength, every talent you have should be aligned with this calling. And when you do, you will know your worth and you will begin to change your world. So go to the next slide. A lot of what I've just unpacked for you guys right here is a part of our spiritual DNA. online course where you go through 5 assessments, very similar to what we just went through today. And you're able to unpack the unique way that God has created you. It's there at spiritualdna.me. Would love for you to check the course out if that's something you'd like to jump into and begin to uncover more of your worth during quarantine. And the next slide, I'd love to give you a free, I just finished a short ebook called God is Near. And it's totally free. It's a short, it's about 28 pages. Could be a great read during quarantine. Just reminding you that God is near. If you just go to DaronEarlewine.com, I'd love to send you a copy of that totally for free today, and hopefully to encourage you during this time when it can feel like maybe God is far away. And that's it from me. And I don't know, either Allison or Craig or Joel, if we have any questions, if we want to jump in.